Barakata Yahweh, Barakata Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Barakahak Wadash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule and teach well. And peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Ra'aya coming at you with another lesson, and I'm going to start it off with an article from the JerusalemPost.com titled, Egypt Revives NATO-Style Arab Force Plan After Israeli Strike in Qatar. Report says, Egypt is pushing to revive a NATO-style Arab military force for rapid defense in case of attacks. The proposal gains traction ahead of an Arab summit, with Cairo seeking regional support. And hey, this is just another piece to the puzzle of the battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat in the so-called Middle East, really Western Asia, the War of Armageddon, the culmination and final, battle during World War III. And, these so-called Arab or Ishmaelite nations, as well as, the Iranians or the Elamites, are going to play a very big part in it. And as we just read, this is in response to recent Israeli strikes on Qatar. Hey, those 1948ers, hey, they're fitting the bill of prophecy, not dealing with what the true children of Israel would be doing when they were in the Holy Land, which, those 1948ers are Edomites of the tribe of Amalek. But they're fulfilling the prophecies of what Esau would do in regards to the Holy Land in that region. But before we continue, this is 2nd Esdras chapter 15 in the Apocrypha. I'm going to read verses 28 to 29, and we're going to come back to it later. Behold, an horrible vision, and the appearance thereof from the east, the so-called Middle East, where the nations of the dragons of Arabia, multiple nations, like a NATO-style Arab system, shall come out with many chariots, their military might, and the multitude of them shall be carried as the wind upon earth, that all they which hear them may fear and tremble. And hey, the talks of a NATO-style Arab force perfectly plays into that 2nd Esdras 15. And, they're having a summit on it today. And however it plays out, these nations, these Ishmaelite nations, are going to band together to come against those 1948ers and, hey, the U.S. as a whole. But continuing, Egypt is seeking to revive a joint Arab military force modeled on NATO, according to multiple Arabic language reports on Saturday that linked the move to the Israel-Hamas war and to an Arab-Islamic summit expected in Doha on Monday or today. The sources include Lebanon's pro-Hezbollah Al-Akbar newspaper, which cited a government source in Cairo. London-based Al-Quds Al-Arabi reported that President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi is working to rebuild Arab backing for a rapid reaction force that could deploy to protect any Arab state under attack, and said the proposal has been floated in recent diplomatic contacts ahead of the summit. The outlet framed the idea as a defensive umbrella rather than an escalation with Israel. Palestinian outlet Ma'an carried similar details and said Cairo is discussing contributing around 20,000 Egyptian troops. They shall come out with many chariots and seeking to place an Egyptian 4-star officer in command with Saudi Arabia as a principal partner if the plan advances. Ma'an characterized the discussions as ongoing. And hey, talking about Saudi Arabia being a principal partner of it, hey, further adds to prophecy, because Saudi Arabia plays a big part in the battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat as well. This is Joel chapter 2, verse 20. But I will remove far off from you the northern army, the North American Army, the United States military, all branches, and will drive him into a land barren and desolate, like a desert, the Middle East, with his face toward the East Sea and his hinder part toward the utmost sea. And when we go to a map of Western Asia, we have Saudi Arabia in the middle here, and where it said with his face toward the East Sea, what's to the east of Saudi Arabia? The Persian Gulf, and above that, Iran, the main target of the U.S. and the state of Israel in that region. Look up something called the Oded-Yinon Plan. And to the northeast, you have Iraq with the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, which, the U.S. has a presence in Iraq, and especially in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has always been used as the main, launch point for any war the U.S. conducted in the Middle East. And it said his hinder part toward the utmost sea, or behind him, the Red Sea, which, over the last year or so, you've had the U.S. Navy exchanging fire with those Houthi Yemeni rebels in the Red Sea. And will drive him into a land barren and desolate, Saudi Arabia, with his face toward the East Sea and his hinder part toward the utmost sea, the Persian Gulf and the Red Sea. And Saudi Arabia is going to be, the main, staging ground, major part of contention for the battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat. And his stink shall come up, and his ill savor shall come up, because he had done great things. There's going to be a great slaughter of U.S. military personnel and these other heathens as militaries in the battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat. Discussions are focusing on how such a body would operate, with Cairo stressing that it must be shaped in line with the demographics and military capacities of participating Arab countries. The idea first floated nearly a decade ago. Slovakia. These articles always can be a little glitchy. The idea, first floated nearly a decade ago, failed to advance at the time, but reports suggest that Israel's recent strike on Hamas leaders in Qatar has brought the proposal back to the fore. Egyptian officials are now seeking backing from other Arab nations to move the initiative forward. The source cited by Al-Akbar emphasized that regional and political considerations would also play a role, noting possible involvement of forces from Morocco and Algeria. The mechanism must allow the force to be deployed when needed, and it should be formed in a way that reflects the composition of Arab states and their armies, while balancing regional politics, the official was quoted as saying. Cairo intends to play a leading role in the force. Another point of negotiation is how command responsibilities would be shared. The source said Egypt intends to hold the top command position, while the second would go to Saudi Arabia or another Gulf state. This reflects Cairo's efforts to secure a leading role in any collective defense arrangement while giving a place of prominence to the Gulf monarchies. Although still in the discussion stage, the initiative signals Egypt's attempts to position itself at the center of the new security framework for the Arab world. The timing of the revived push, coming days after an Israeli strike in Doha, has added urgency to Cairo's efforts to rally support among its regional partners. There was no immediate official confirmation from Cairo. Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid was quoted in Arabic media criticizing the reported proposal as a blow to existing peace frameworks. Talk about the pot calling the kettle black. The report about Egypt's proposal to establish a joint Arab force in response to the Israeli strikes is a severe blow to the peace agreements, Lapid wrote on X/Twitter. It comes immediately after the severe blow to the Abraham Accords, which itself came right after the overwhelming majority of countries that were once Israel's allies voted in favor of establishing a Palestinian state, Lapid concluded. And those 1948ers, those Amalekite Edomites, have been on a tear recently with all these strikes, to purportedly take out Hamas or Hezbollah leadership. They're constantly pushing for war with Iran, and these different so-called Arab Ishmaelite nations. Hey, they're getting to that breaking point to where, hey, Egypt is pushing what? A NATO-style Arab alliance. And again, hey, this all perfectly plays into big biblical prophecy, the War of Armageddon, that horrible vision from the East. That's it with this article. Now I'm going to go to my second article on Newsweek.com. Iran calls for Islamic NATO. Iran and Egypt are spearheading new calls for a NATO-style alliance in the Middle East as their leaders gather in Qatar on Monday for an emergency summit of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC. The proposal, spurred by Israel's recent strike on a residential compound in Doha that housed Hamas negotiators, represents the most serious push in decades for a unified regional defense pact. Now we're going to go back to 2nd Esdras chapter 15. I'll reread from 28. Behold an horrible vision, and the appearance thereof from the east, when the nations of the dragons of Arabia shall come out with many chariots, and the multitude of them shall be carried as the wind upon the earth, that all they which hear them may fear and tremble. Verse 30, also the Carmanians raging. And when you look up the Carmanians, that's speaking of the Elamites. And Carmania, if I remember correctly, was located in present-day Iran. So, this is speaking of the Iranians. So what? We've got the dragons of Arabia, these Ishmaelite nations, as well as the Iranians, the Carmanians. Also the Carmanians, raging in wrath, shall go forth as the wild boars of the wood, and with great power shall they come and join battle with them, join battle with the dragons of Arabia, allying themselves together. Iran and Egypt are spearheading new calls for a NATO-style alliance in the Middle East, and join battle with them, and shall waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians. And the land of the Assyrians can go into two things. It can go into, the land of Israel, because when the ancient, Neo-Assyrian Empire, took over the northern kingdom, they occupied some of the land of Israel. So what? Coming against those 1948ers, which, as we've been reading those articles, this call for a NATO Arab alliance is in response to Israel's recent attacks. And that portion of the land of the Assyrians can also go into America, because one of the things America is known as in the scriptures is spiritual Assyria. And, you've been hearing about a lot of talks of, Iranian and other sleeper cells in America just waiting to get the go-ahead to do, Teist attacks. So everything is just perfectly coming into place, and the vision is being made clear as we get closer and closer to these prophecies coming to their fulfillment. And we can truly see who Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai has been dealing with from the very beginning, from the apostles and elders all the way down, the brothers of GMS or Great Millstone, as well as the brothers coming in the spirit of GMS. And then, just as a whole, the truth came out of One West. Hence why, all these wacky-tacky Christians and these scoffers and bug-outs, like to come against, the camps and the offshoots that came from One West. Though, again, the truth is with GMS. Why it matters. The latest escalation reflects a dramatic shift in Middle Eastern security priorities following a 12-day series of Israeli attacks on Iranian targets earlier this year, ongoing strikes in Gaza, and Israel's recent attack on Doha. Muslim leaders are increasingly portraying Israel as the destabilizing force across the region. Now let's go to the book of Obadiah, which is just one chapter. I'm going to read verses 1 to 2. And this whole book is dedicated to the judgment and the downfall of you Edomites, you so-called white people, which the Amalekite Edomites are the top tribe of, the Edomites. And the header reads, Edom will be humbled. The vision of Obadiah, thus saith the Lord Yahweh concerning Edom. We have heard a rumor from Yahweh, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. These different Arab nations seeing the 1948ers as a destabilizing force in the region. So their response is for talks of an Arab-style NATO alliance to defend themselves and best believe go on the offense. That horrible vision from the east. Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen. Thou art greatly despised. And the reputation of those Amalekite Edomites, those 1948ers, are small and hated and despised on the global stage. Everybody has been coming after you over, initially that war in Gaza, but now everybody's, linking you to all these different problems, going on, and how, you Amalekite Edomites are at the head of it. Because what? As it said in, I believe, Numbers either Numbers chapter 19 or Numbers 22, that Amalek would be the first of the nations. This is Jeremiah 49, verse 20. Therefore hear the counsel of Yahweh that he had taken against Edom, and his purposes that he hath purposed against the inhabitants of Teman. So this is directed towards you Edomites. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Those Amalekite Edomites, with their constant, military conflicts in that Middle Eastern region, drawing, these Arab nations to talk about an Arab NATO. And then what? Eventually, that war with Iran popping off, which is going to draw out, the U.S. and NATO in on the side of the 1948ers, though there's going to be a fracture within that. But on the side of Iran, Russia, China, Turkey, and her other allies. Read Ezekiel chapter 38. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitations desolate with them, because nukes are going to fly during World War III. The land of Israel is going to get hit, and, the U.S. is going to get hit by nuclear missiles. They waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians. The only difference is that the land of Israel is going to be built back up when the true children of Israel, beginning with the elect, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, and, you have the Israelite foreigners who through the scattering amongst these nations over the generations have come to look like these heathens, are going to be back in the land, building it back up. But as for the United States of America, it's going to be permanently desolate. Let's exit out some of these articles. Arab and Iranian officials warn that failure to act could leave states across the Middle East vulnerable to further Israeli operations. The emergency OIC summit is now seen as a pivotal moment to determine whether Muslim nations can transform calls for unity into a concrete collective security framework. What to know? Egypt, commanding the Arab world's largest army, is pushing for a Cairo-based joint military command. Senior Iranian officials are pressing for an even broader coalition. Mohsen Rezai, a former commander of Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, warned that Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Iraq could be future targets unless the bloc acts decisively, declaring that the only solution is forming a military coalition. Senior Iranian cleric Jalal Rezavi Meir amplified the message, calling for a single Islamic army which shared defensive and offensive doctrines. At the same time, Iranian diplomats urged caution. Madai Shustari of the Foreign Ministry in Tehran said it was still too early to formalize a pact, but noted conditions were more favorable than in the past. Meanwhile, Pakistan, the world's only nuclear-armed Muslim state, has also urged the creation of a joint task force to monitor Israeli actions and adopt coordinated deterrent and offensive measures. Qatar's rebuke. On Sunday, Qatar's Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdurrahman Al Thani condemned the Israeli strike as an assault on the principle of mediation itself. He faulted the international community for failing to restrain Israel and urged Muslim nations to adopt real and tangible measures to avoid an endless cycle of bloodshed and destruction. But that's it with this article. Now I'm going to go to Joel chapter 3. I'm going to start at verse 9 because this is the end point to where all these different situations are leading to. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, the heathens. Prepare war, World War III, war with Iran, nuclear war, the war of Armageddon. Wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. As we're seeing, talks for an Arab-style NATO. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Yahweh. Those death angels holding back this great destruction, waiting to get the go-ahead to fully release it, which is mainly going to happen after the mark of the BEAST, that micro C-hip implant, is mandatorily implemented, which that's right around the corner as well. Look up, the Genius Act, the Compliance Act, stable coins, etc., etc. Let the heathen be wakened. The United States of America, the State of Israel, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Turkey, NATO, Russia, China, these other Arab nations. Let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, which in the Hebrew is Yahweh's Shabbat, or Yahweh's judgment. For there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. And when you go up to the first couple of verses of this chapter, you'll see why. Because of what you heathens, beginning with you Edomites, as pursuant to Psalms chapter 83, did to the children of Israel. For there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. Put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come get you down, for the press is full. The fats overflow, for their wickedness is great. Multitudes, multitudes. A horrible vision from the east. The dragons of Arabia, the Carmanians raging. Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision. That northern army being brought into that land barren and desolate, the least of the flock drawing them out. For the day of Yahweh is near in the valley of decision, and we can damn sure see that it's very near. So that's it with this video. With this video, I hope you sincere, Akim and Akwath, were edified. Just keep strong. We are almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharallah, and until next time, Shalom.